Links, Perform Media, eBay Advertising, and The Economist. And I will let Tom come up and introduce those panelists to you. So please do a big warm welcome for Tom.
No, don't do that. Just come on up. We haven't got enough time.
Hey, good to see you.
Right, okay, so we have 5 people, we have 30 minutes, and I like talking, so we better get on with it. So we're going to dispense with many of the introductions because they're actually written in here. That's who these people are. They're also written on the wall. Some of them worked elsewhere before, and most of them are really interesting, which is good because we're talking about waterfalls. Right. Okay, so I don't think anybody in this room will be brave enough to put their hand up to say they don't know what waterfalls are, but when we did the prep for this, guess what, we did some. We picked a victim to try and explain what waterfalls were in about 30 seconds.
It was, it was 120 seconds, Tom, I think.
Oh, was it? Oh, sorry.
Well, I'll try and make it 30 seconds. I'm sure everyone knows what it is, but for those who don't, basically it's a yield management technique that most publishers use in terms of trying to optimize performance, yield, and fill by passing back to demand sources from partner A to partner B to partner C, hence the term waterfall or daisy chain. It's quite, in some ways, a crude model. Publishers started off doing this for ad networks. They've now kind of evolved that thinking into doing it for SSPs. Depending on the technology stack that a publisher has, ad server, SSP, platform or medium, display, video, mobile. It was 120. It was 120. So basically, it's going to define the strategy that publisher takes. As I said, it's not very efficient. It takes a lot of levers, optimization. Who does it? Is it sales, operations, or a programmatic team? And ultimately, the holy grail is a holistic ad serving solution where ad decisioning, yield, direct, programmatic are all managed in the one ecosystem.
Okay, right. So basically, if you can't sell the ads using one SSP, you go to another one. Yeah, that's what waterfall is. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the market as well.
Depends on the market, of course. Okay, so let me ask a few questions across the floor. So we have some people here, and Barnaby, I'm not just going to pick on you because
I'm on the end.
Because you're on the end.
And you can see me.
Yeah, that's it. But waterfalls, does that have an impact on the user experience?
I think there are a lot of challenges with the waterfall model, and we've talked today, you've already heard today about some of the big challenges in the industry, ad blocking being one of them, and I think one of the reasons that ad blocking has become so prevalent is the user experience, is maybe the number of ads on the page, but also how long it takes for the page to load.
So that does have an impact on the user experience?
Absolutely, it has a huge impact on user experience, and I think from a publisher perspective, it's trying to find a way to maximize your yield, balance that with the best user experience possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's been, I guess, an evolution in terms of the waterfall model, which when you look at, the original days of ad serving, good old DART, dynamic advertising, reporting and targeting, it was about really trying to have a good understanding of your inventory, trying to forecast accurately what you had to sell. And the reality was that back in those days, there weren't necessarily that many ads on the page. The value of the ads in those days were very high. As more and more inventories come online, the price of inventory has come down lower, and the sales through has got lower. And so publishers have always had to try and find another way to monetize. And I think that's where the waterfall really started kicking in. And I think what we're seeing now with the rise of header bidding is the next generation trying to solve that problem.
So, forgive me. The Ladybird Book of Programmatic Advertising says that you only need one SSP because it's plugged into all the demand points, and you only need one DSP because it's plugged into all the SSPs.
It's not the case, actually. No, it's not.
So what we publishers were sold, that isn't true?
It is not true. The truth is that we've been testing adding several SSPs over the years, and we've always seen incrementality by actually implementing new SSPs, and this is due to the mix that you're seeing from a demand perspective, but also from a publisher perspective. In each one of the SSPs, you've got different publishers, different way of using each one of the SSPs, hence why when you run an auction in each one of these SSPs, you have a different results in the auction. And the demand doesn't also behave the same way in each one of the SSP. It's sort of a question of mix in each one of them and the results of the auction.
So, does eBay use waterfalls?
Yes, we do.
And what do you think about the user experience?
So it has an impact on the user experience in terms of latency. And we try to contravene this issue by actually running it asynchronous. So it's a very tough word to say for a French speaker, to be honest. So it's just making sure that the page load before the ads do, but we still have an impact on the page load.
Right. And so you've actually measured that?
We do measure that, yes, we do.
And I'm getting a nod from the economist as well. So
Yeah, I mean, we also use some...
I'm waiting for one of you guys to disagree with one of you other guys so I don't have to do all the questions.
We also use some waterfalls. I think from a premium publisher point of view, it can be incredibly frustrating for us because obviously our focus is along the PMP route. And so that can go to compound your waterfalls even further when using multiple SSPs to try and make sure that those get the first look before any open exchange does. And it has a big impact on latency. We've actually had to get to the point where we've removed certain SSPs from the waterfalls because eventually ad requests were timing out. And it's a bit frustrating because waterfalls are kind of the quickest way for a publisher to be able to test and get yield optimization ideas, try and see which SSPs are actually bringing in the demand. And they're a quick and easy way to shift SSPs up and down to test that. I do agree with Barnaby that header technology is kind of the industry's way of solving this issue. But the problem with it is it's very much a code-based solution. You've got to implement it on the page level. You no longer have this ability to quickly test, and you're not really getting the bid density that you're trying to achieve.
With the adeptness of a short-term panel covering a very complicated session, we got header technology into the conversation right here. But before, why can't I just have my SSP compete with my direct bought stuff in a dynamic way? So I can just optimize my pricing like that. Why can't I do that?
Ideally, you would.
Aha.
I mean, that would be great, right?
Yeah.
But generally, we work with a lot of publishers, and there's a reasonably large buyer until just a few months ago. Worked with an awful lot of publishers.
Exactly.
And you see these patterns of silos. And even within the agency and the buy side, you've got these silos as well. You've got people who place orders for fixed numbers of impressions, and then you've got some other people who take those orders. But then you've got this other growing team that's kind of chucking money around and is trying to manipulate price and is trying to find new ways of getting lower prices. You can use that to your pricing advantage on the buy side. Once you learn that a publisher is using SSP X as their last hop on the waterfall, stop buying from any of their other SSPs. Just wait for it to fall down. And that's one very powerful way you can exert negative pressure on price. It's really hard to detect. All you'll see is that eventually that demand source starts to dry up, and then you shuffle things around again. But it's probably about 24 hours before the buy side will realize what you've done and just catch up. And then you've got to do it all again. And it's a bit Excel related, I would suggest.
So given what we heard from Guy about the importance of programmatic going forward, it seems important that we sort this out. Are we going to agree as a panel that it isn't just a little bit of lost revenue which is worth losing because the consumer experience is impacted by, or are we going to say there are better solutions?
I mean, so in my new role, we're working with publishers to identify what that loss looks like, and in some cases, it's colossal. It's like the game. It's not just like a little bit on the side. It can.
And when you say colossal in noughts?
Can be as much as 50%.
Oh,
colossal. That you miss. A big, yeah.
All right, Barnaby.
I think
30 seconds. Sorry. 30 seconds on what header bidding is.
Well, it's not a silver bullet. I think that's the really key thing.
Yeah, but that doesn't, philosophically, it's not the solution.
I think, we've seen it. I think there needs to be an evolution of ad ops to yield analysis, because I think that's a key skill set for any header, you know, if you're going to implement header bidding, you need to
He's had press training. You ask him a question, he tells you what he's been told to say. It's 30 seconds on what header bidding is.
Absolutely.
Come on.
It's complex to set up and manage, and it's all about the controls and visibility, right? So those are the three things. The thing about header bidding is it's a call, as Jean-Baptiste was saying, it's a call basically to a auction before you're actually calling the ad server. So that's the definition, I guess, of what a header bidder is.
Brilliant. Okay. Does that have an impact on how fast the page loads?
Yes, it will. I think just to go back on one, if we want to stimulate some debate, as Barney mentioned, it's the ad ops team. You know, as a guy who's got an ad ops experience in terms of previous role, ultimately it's a technology solution rather than an individual, because it's programmatic is supposed to be automated. It's supposed to be a technology-driven solution. What we're finding is it's very much a human interaction at a publisher level to pull levers, to plug one SSP in, to plug one out, to manage the kind of the threat that Ed mentioned in regards to buyers accessing inventory at a lower price point. So from an industry perspective, there needs to be, you know, there's a lot of consolidation on in the market in terms of ad serving tech. And ideally from a publisher point of view, we want one system to manage everything where we can, as I said earlier, holistically manage top to bottom. Header bidding is a kind of means to an end. Ultimately, there's going to be an SSP for header bidding, or there's going to be, you know, that type of solution which is, you know, out there.
Do we agree?
Absolutely. I think that it's very true. I mean, you got these, you get all the pictures from header bidders, and there's all the SSPs have a header bidder technology, and a reason why it's better than the rest. But the fact of the matter is very few of them allow true competition between each other. And as a publisher, that's what we want. We want everyone to get a chance and the highest bidder to win.
And so does this auction before it gets to the ad server take place on the client's computer or take place on the servers?
So it's taking place on the SSP.
It's taking place on the SSP.
Yeah, it's taking place on the technology partner.
So presumably that doesn't therefore impact the page load too much?
No, I mean, that's the beauty of it. And it's the reason it's called header is it's called before any other call to an ad server. And, you know, programmatic aims to deliver relatively quickly in terms of milliseconds. So
forgive me, what is bad about that?
Well, I mean, there's potential latency. There's potential, obviously, going back to an earlier point that Guy mentioned in terms of the number of ads on a page and that whole ad experience. There's a fine line between getting the right price for an inventory, UX. You know, if content's loading before an ad, to a user who's used to seeing a page with an ad on it, that could be, you know, an indication of poor product. Yeah. And from a product point of view, you know, we have this issue ourselves at Perform where we've actually relaunched one of our products on mobile site. We've gone down the asynchronous route, and our product guys are killing the ad ops guys because the ads aren't loading.
Yeah.
And would my header, the first part of an HTML page, therefore be dependent on the scripts working for the prequel?
Yes.
So I would therefore be dependent on the server-side solution.
Yes.
So if I wanted my header to load quickly, I shouldn't have scripts running in it.
Yeah. So at eBay, for instance, we don't allow to actually put any code in the header that will be advertising code, because we know that it's actually going to slow down the page and how it's going to load. And the integration that we're after here is actually doing the same as a header bidder, but doing it from the ad server, so that it's actually loading after the page loads.
So Ed, 50% of the money might be at risk here.
It's quite worth thinking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the goal of header bidding is to come to more market information being clearer to all parties. Everyone knows what they bid, everyone knows what came in, and you've got an outcome, and you hope that that outcome is going to hold true for maybe a couple more seconds for your ads to actually load and that prediction to come to reality. The trouble is that's really predictable, and you can see it. And what you might start to be tempted to do is to mess with soft flaws, and you might start kind of setting new flaws in the inventory by seller, and then that starts to move to a kind of, not a full first price auction, but starts to get that way. And when buyers start to see that they're not getting the normal kind of difference between what was bid and what was paid, as those two kind of start to collide, you can start to observe players doing undesirable things to manipulate the auction price. And you usually just turn it off. There's no discussion about it. It just starts to be too expensive to support because you know you're being gamed in that auction. So you have to be really, really sensitive to how you do it. I strongly believe the best way of doing that is to value individual users. Guy is talking about one-to-one addressable kind of targeting, but actually pricing is the natural outcome of that, that you should have one-to-one pricing, and therefore bucketing together users just because they all visited the same section of the site and therefore has a premium price isn't necessarily a great idea, because you might well be leaving those same users in other parts of your site or with other traits, really offering them to the market at knockdown prices. That's something that's really, really scary.
Okay, so now
Sorry.
we got half our time to go. Get in there.
Just one point, then I'll shut up. So, just from a publisher point of view as well, putting a tag on a page, you're stripping away or exposing your data or your audience, which is obviously a very, sensitive topic. And obviously, if waterfalling of SSPs means buyers are bidding potentially further down the funnel, putting a header tag on a page and exposing the first look or that audience is, again, it's a sensitive topic. And for publishers, you're giving away, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, basically.
I think, actually, let's turn that on its head, because for me, header bidding and the value of header bidding is all about the user session. Okay? When we're talking about first look, first look in the world of programmatic is first look in the inventory that a publisher is going to put into the programmatic pot. Okay? I think we agreed that's the definition. I think with header bidding, actually the value, if we saw guys' figures, we're talking about 70 to 80% being programmatic. We're seeing a massive growth in private marketplaces. At the moment, some people might traffic a private marketplace tag higher up the stack. If you're giving first look, true first look, to a user, and you know that you've got maybe 6, 8, pages or bounces on a session, you've got a lot of value throughout that. Now, the problem is, what happens is the guarantee campaigns get the first look, okay? They get the first impression. And then the ad server does its work, and maybe that person goes 2 or 3 pages further into the session. Then it waterfalls down to programmatic, and automatically that's a less valuable user for the programmatic world. So I think publishers, it's a bit like what we saw earlier with Phoenix, and I don't want to do too much plugging of programmatic today, but looking at the risk strategy that publishers have to exposing that true first look to the programmatic world, bearing in mind that they've got an element of control in terms of which campaigns they want to compete, in terms of what the price points are. They've got actually the chance to be relatively risk averse to start off with, but actually really push up that price for that true first look, because I truly believe if you're buying audience and you're buying performance, on the programmatic side, there's a lot of value, and we see it across the programmatic platform in terms of some of those bid and some of those bid prices. So the actual uptick is potentially really huge. But I think not enough publishers maybe feel ready to take that risk to show a true first look.
And you're not worried about the data aspect, or you can give publishers some assurance about, because sticking somebody else's tag on your site or multiple other people's tags on your site?
I think publishers already do that, though. Publishers already put tags on their pages for all sorts of reasons, be it to collect their own data. They put ad serving tags on the site anyway, so they're sort of, in essence, sharing that data with their ad server and their ad serving partner.
Daniel?
Well, I find it interesting. So yes, there is this degree of we're putting ad tags on the page. I think what we're getting at is when you look at the programmatic market, it's full of retargeters and people that depend on data. And if now you're putting them and giving them the first look on every single page you load, it's gone from giving them access to the remnant or the unsold inventory to giving them access to everything and possibly being able to model on that. And I think that's the concern as a publisher. Us at The Economist, we're particularly protective of our data. And that is definitely a concern with header bidding in terms of, do we just give everyone everything now?
And The Economist has got firewalls and subscription revenues to look after as well. And Jean-Baptiste, you've got e-commerce revenues to look after as well. So where are you with that? Letting the header tag have, or letting data points being grabbed off your site. Is that fine, free for all? Just find out who the
No, it's not. So from a data perspective, we don't pass any data to our SSPs. We pass the data to the SSPs, but we don't expose the full URL to our buyers. And the only way that they can actually have access to our first-party data is through a private marketplace deal or through a direct integration. But we don't expose our data at all.
I still can't quite work out why you can't just have your ad server, because the first look thing, yeah, sure, you give it to a PMP, you might have not done the best with that particular impression, that particular user. Yeah. But why can't the guaranteed system for the single impression just compete directly with the non-guaranteed thing on a basis of price? Why can't the SSP just compete with the ad set?
And it does already with Google Alex dynamic allocation, for instance.
So
You already have guaranteed versus unguaranteed.
So the header bidding solution looks like a sort of more complicated than perhaps it needs to be. So I still can't quite see why it needs to be like that.
Well, I think dynamic allocation is great in Google, but it's far from real time. And it's far from real competition. I mean, anyone who's actually worked with the enhanced dynamic allocation, you'll know that you've got to go in there, you've got to work out eCPMs, you've got to put it in so that it can all compete. And the fact of the matter is you may be sending inventory to something that's got a higher eCPM, but there's no guarantee that they're actually going to buy it. So I guess where we're trying to go with what we want as a publisher is a technology that when we've got our 2 or 3 SSPs bidding on inventory, the highest bidder will win in real time, no matter who the SSP is, and have the ability to have a look, okay, is there an unguaranteed direct deal in there that I actually want to bump out for this programmatic deal because the bid's higher? And I think that's what we're missing at the moment, even in the header bidder technology.
All right. So hopefully that's fairly plain that that's where the debate is. Yeah. I think that, so, but is this really I mean, this one's for you, Ed. Other major challenges for buyers in this world. You've come from the buy side, advising. But so this seems to be just one of the challenges. Isn't it just really hard to know how to allocate your budgets, how much you should put where now? Everything's fragmented. Tell us where we're going here. We're just making it more and more and more complicated.
We are, and it is really difficult to work out truth in pricing because the buy side is starting to think about individual users. And then you go, well, I can buy user 1, 2, 3 on 10 different sites. Where's best to buy them? Where am I going to get, viewability has already come up, but where am I going to get the best context? And does context matter if I'm wanting to target this person because she's in market for fashion and she's on a fashion site? I should probably pay a bit more for that. I should put a bit more into the game to make sure I get that because it's going to have a better outcome for me. That's really difficult. And the majority of advertisers, I'd say about 98%, aren't there yet to be able to understand the difference between those different impressions on their business.
Okay, so
they struggle to make value, which is why I think prices can get held back. There are times, and anyone who's worked with a gambling or betting client knows how crazy prices will get at key sporting events. You can afford to start paying £1 an impression to protect your whales. And you get really disappointed when it turns out that some kind of irrelevant siloed away, boxed off deal that sold that same impression for 0.6 cents or something, and you were standing there offering your whole £1 for that one impression. That's really frustrating as a buyer. So the buy side realistically wants full price competition so that they can win with cash, because that's ultimately what they have. They have money.
Right. All of this leaves me thinking, I mean, having worked in media for nearly 400 years now, once upon a time, the IT department used to be at the end of the corridor, and it was totally confusing, and no one knew what they did because it was difficult. Yeah. And then it got packaged up and made easier. And then when digital first came along, it was strange people who did digital advertising, people like Guy Phillipson and Tom Bowman. And it was at the end of the corridor, and it was complicated because it was difficult. And now, some 20 years later, those people are now the normal people. And this bit sounds like it's the bit at the end of the corridor which is complicated because it's difficult and you need to be especially clever to do it. And we seem to just be going round this loop again, which doesn't seem to fit very well with the idea that it's going to be 60 or 70% of the business of digital advertising fairly shortly. So what I'm getting to is we're going to end up having to vote in the next few minutes. Yeah. Waterfalls, doesn't sound like anybody likes those, but that's what people are using. Header bidding, another answer. Sounds also very complicated. Yeah. Can't do dynamic allocation for some reason or other. Because apparently all SSPs don't connect with all DSPs, and apparently all DSPs don't connect with all SSPs. Maybe just fix that. Yeah. And that's going to. So the real question is, the evolution of digital media technology here, what has to happen?
Well, going back to the point, I think the technology needs to change and be more efficient. From a publisher point of view, from a cost perspective, and you want your single ad decisioning tool, yield management tool, be that an ad server, an SSP, whatever you want to call it, but that needs to house all the demand sources, direct sold, programmatic in one system, and publishers can then make the choice about who has access to the inventory at what price point. Because that then does away with the means to an end, which is waterfalls, header bidding. Ultimately, all publishers want to have the best and most relevant ads to a user in terms of UX and obviously yield and performance. So it's a technology solution. Really, it's kind of back out to, and obviously there's consolidation, and people are trying to build this full stack solution, top to bottom, display, video, mobile. I think we're probably 18 months away from that being fully fledged on all fronts. But I think at that point, the tools should be there for publishers to make their life a bit more simple again in terms of the guys in the collar.
So should we do header bidding in the meantime?
I think it's up to the publisher to decide. I think
Got to do something.
got to do something. I mean, ultimately, display revenues that, in terms of contrary to that, are going down in terms of broad CPMs. If we can increase CPMs and by header bidding, I think that's an avenue or it's an option. But it needs to work for not only revenue but also UX, yield, all of these.
Anybody agree?
So, sorry. I found your tone quite pessimistic, saying that it's been complicated. Yes, it's complicated, but if I were to turn whatever you said into optimistic words, I would say that with the waterfall, we found a way to make things more efficient at a publisher level, making sure that we could propose our inventory at different price points for each one of the buyers at different points of buying. And then the header bidder, we haven't figured it out yet. Like from what we are saying, we haven't figured it out yet. And I really think that it's the next step, and that next year we can come back here and say it was a great thing, it's less complicated. And we will talk about the next challenge, which will be a complicated challenge.
Yeah, I agree with the output of header bidding. That's what we...
You agree with the output?
The output is great. A list of people and how much they're prepared to pay for what I'm about to sell.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And there's very few other markets that actually have that. If you look at the financial markets, you don't know it until you offer your item for sale, and people will come in and they will buy it. And then you'll agree a price in the market. I think here in London, we're really lucky. We have a great talent pool of people who have worked in financial industries who can come in and help us as an industry to understand this. Same in New York, and we've done that. We've hired ex-hedge fund folks to come in and help us understand price, because it's something that we do really badly, I think, as an industry. And so I think that you can get to the same idea of price per page, per impression, per second on screen almost, using that information. And you can get to that without actually executing the auction. You can look at historical information.
And can you get to that and make it easy for someone to just...
I believe so. I believe that most of the infrastructure is there. We're in tests with our publisher base right now. So if there's any Skimlinks publishers, get in touch with your account manager and we'll get you signed up to that program. It is working. You can set correct pricing information and predictability within thresholds. You can associate risk with it. You can say there's a 10% chance we're wrong. Are you prepared to take that risk? And that's effectively the same trade-off we make today with waterfalling and trying to divvy up impressions artificially. An arbitrary 25% goes here and 25% there. That's definitely wrong, at least 25% of the time.
So on the other side of eBay's business then is all about auctions. Yeah. So do you actually spend much time lying awake at night as a business that they're thinking that you hadn't actually got the optimal price? Or is it the fact that there was a strike price and people were happy and they got the product?
So it doesn't work the same way, because we don't waterfall our auctions. we don't go from eBay to eBay 2 to eBay 3. And second of all, the auction, we don't set pricing as well. We are much more in control in the end of the auction in advertising, from a pricing and from a tech waterfalling structure than in the product world. In the product world, we can influence how the auction is run and how many users are going to be on the auction, and influence people into how to
So you're a facilitating technology, really?
Yeah.
So isn't that really the position of ad technology? It's actually a facilitating technology.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I would say is something we haven't mentioned here, but I think it's really critical, because we can talk about some of the challenges with viewability, ad blocking, et cetera, the one elephant in the room that hasn't really been addressed, and I think is going to have to be addressed, because if you look at the growth of mobile, is that sequential storytelling. I know I'll say storytelling again, across multiple screens, because you look at mobile, you look at the growth of that, and I think at the end of the day, desktop as it's now become, is only one digital channel. And now all of a sudden you've got, you know, you've got tablet, you've got mobile, you're going to have addressable TV. You know, it's trying to actually optimize across all those multiple channels, being able to identify that user, serve the optimal ad to them at the right time. And that's really, for me, the next challenge. And so it's not just about solving the waterfall for desktop, it's about solving the waterfall across multiple
Funny
screens.
word, optimal, isn't it? Because it's sort of slightly sort of non-mathematical, it's sort of vaguely aspirational.
Exactly.
Doing it slightly better.
And that's why you need yield analysts, right? That's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
you need mathematicians to be able to look at that data and make decisions.
Yeah, that's good. So, panel, hands up if you like header bidding.
I actually
Just
quite
me,
like
obviously.
it. Given everything I just said, it's still the
40,
current means to
40%
an
like
end.
header bidding. It's all right, we've got
All right,
35
guys.
seconds here.
All right.
Hands up if you don't like waterfalls. 100%. I'm going to do a waterfall-like activity now, and actually, in a true programmatic style, do a pass back. Phil? That's us.
Thank you very much, Tom. I see what you did there.